I'll introduce you to Bill, who I met on the phone some months ago, and we discussed his options when he was considering going to Germany for stem cell treatment. So he's happy to share his experience with us today. So thank you, Bill. And then the other end of the table, Alan. Alan has looked at a range of options out there. He's looked at stem cell research, and I think took part in the Walk On program, and more recently he was telling me he is an ambassador for e-legs. We'll hear some more about that. That's what it is. It is. All right, so let's take some questions from the floor, but I might kick off discussion, and I'm going to pick on Alan. Okay, so I was talking to some of the researchers at lunchtime, and one of them said to me, some years ago, Christopher Reeve said, "I wish I was a rat," because I think he wanted to take part in some clinical trials. And Alan, as he pointed out this morning, ran a first-in-human clinical trial when we've got some animal data, but it's never been done in humans before. Just wanted to maybe ask you from a bit of a personal perspective, how does that feel? What considerations, obviously apart from the selection criteria, and we know a lot of people with spinal cord injury say they want to take risks. What considerations did you guys undertake when you put this trial together? And I guess you would have had to have informed people taking part about the risks as well.
Yes, I mean, we obviously didn't do it lightly, and we went through a long process of thinking about the ethics of it, and it went to the ethics committee and at the PA hospital, and of comprising about 6 people. No, actually the ethics committee, I'm not quite sure how many, but then they had a reference committee of clinicians of about 6 clinicians, and then they sent it out to 3 reviewers to discuss. So in terms of those issues, we considered all of the issues and the evidence of whether it was risky or not risky. We had actually done with some colleagues in China, we had put the cells into some primates, some monkeys, and followed them for 6 months and without any adverse consequences. So that backed up the rat studies, if you like. And then after that, I mean, as a scientist, I wasn't the one bearing the risk. It was the patients bearing the risk, and it was the doctors bearing the risk. And so Tim Geraghty, the director of the PA Spinal Injuries Unit at the time, he took the kind of overall medical responsibility, and of course the surgeons took the responsibility. And actually, just when we started to kick off the trial, you might remember there was a big problem because back in about 2001, the medical insurance reinsurers fell over internationally, and suddenly all of these doctors had no insurance. And so then we had to go to the state government to guarantee that they would insure any medical risk. So I'm not quite sure if that's the kind of answer you want, but...
Yep. Does anyone have any questions for Alan? Oh, sorry, Cole.
Can I ask one?
Yep.
To both Alan on the end and also to Bill, could you tell me if there was one particular thing that swayed you in your decision to, Alan, in your case, to decide not to pursue a stem cell treatment, and Bill, for you, if there was one particular thing that swayed your decision to decide to pursue a stem cell treatment?
I mean, I'll just quickly, 30 seconds background. I've always believed life's about choices and about options. And I think we need to educate ourselves on options and empower ourselves with choices. When I had my injury nearly 5 years ago, I said to my physio at the spinal unit at the PA, Josh, who his advice was always golden. You know, I might go to India was the buzzword. I might go to India and get stem cell. I said, well, you know, what have I got to lose? And he said to me, you've got everything to lose. You can use your hands, can't you? You can see, can't you? And that really struck me. And I thought to myself, yeah, you're right. And so I looked further and I looked into America. And at the time, they were doing the rodent models at Reeves Institute. And I went over there and spent a couple of days with Hans Kirstead and looked at what they were doing with their stem cell, looked at what that was going to do. I learned a little bit about the FDA approval taking 11 years or 7 years if it's fast-tracked, and it became obvious to me that that treatment is the future and stem cell is the future. But for me, in a chronic phase of the injury, I opted to go with a non-invasive treatment or a non-invasive program. I went to a spinal injury recovery program called Project Walk, which we now actually have here in Brisbane, called Walk On. And I just thought that I've got a lot to lose by any invasive types of things. The technology or the research that was happening at the Reeves Institute was still going to be a long way away. And the safety I felt for the recovery program based on exercise was something that I really opted for. And then recently, as you said, I became a test pilot for a bionic exoskeleton, which was pretty exciting after 5 years to actually stand up and start walking. It was quite powerful. And while I was there, I went to Stanford and they had a seminar or a presentation on the P10 research, which is another really exciting thing that's coming. So I think we're, for the first time in the world, you know, in history, we're looking at options that have never existed before and choices that we'll get to make going forward that we never have before. So I think it's a really exciting time to be at the forefront and to see, you know, options that have never existed. So I decided not to go with any sort of invasive type of treatment. I didn't want to lose what I had because I thought what I had was worth keeping.
Yeah, well, I'm a T12 incomplete as a result of a motorcycle accident in 2009. We got down to the end of last year. My wife Geraldine had done some research on the internet to find out what was out there in the way of stem cell procedures, surgery, whatever you want to call it. There was a lot out there, a lot you wouldn't go to, a lot of very, very expensive things that was being thrown up to everybody, and of course it's a glimmer of hope, and that's what you've got to keep in the back of your mind. A lot of people can build very creative websites and tell you a whole lot of fancy stuff that'll give you a greater sense of hope. But I knew I'd walk again, or will walk again, because of the intense physio I'm doing. And don't kid yourself, stem cells, the silver bullet. It's not going to solve everything. I'm in the walk-on program here. I go to rehab every morning at Clem Jones and walk up and down the 25-metre hydro pool there. If I'm in 1.2 metres of water, I'm okay. If you put me in fresh air, I'll fall over and hit my head. So for me, beyond walking, there's the other issues that we all suffer from spinal injuries, and that's the bowel, bladder, sexual functions. That was the turning point for me. When you go to where I went to the Excel Centre in Cologne, Germany, they give you no guarantees. They're very upfront about that. From their results, people were getting 30 to 50% improvement in their bodily functions. I'm a bit of a gambler, so I thought that was pretty good odds. They also said that you wouldn't see results until 3 to 6 months. I saw results within 3 weeks. We were still in Europe, and I could do away with enemas for the first time in 2 years, and that was a big thing for me, and I reckon that was worth 11 grand. So for me, that was a turning point, and there's lots of other functions that have picked up. I can identify 8. Now, the walk-on program will get me walking, I'm sure, but I just wanted to take that extra bit of security.
Actually, we have another question from the floor.
to the Alan with the distinguished moustache. I'd like to ask a question of your gut, if you don't mind, Alan. Just on a gut feeling, and thinking of your distinguished colleagues and reputable ones around the world, how long do you think it will take before repairing stem cell damage, or spinal cord damage, I should say, will become a regular and standard operation and very high success rate?
A very long time.
We're saying 10, 20?
At least 20. Because even if we could do that in rats today, the process of getting a clinical trial in, as I described, it's a long, hard road. And now, of course, if you had it all working today and somebody invested up big and you could do it all in one big hit, it wouldn't take that long. But the reality is the funding doesn't come in a giant hit like that. And Geron are doing it, I think, so that, without being too cynical, I think that they're finding safety for these cells to use for other applications. Because even when you think about how many people it's going to require to get a measurable statistical effect with a trial where they're putting in cells, it's at 14 days. It's a huge trial. It's a huge, huge number. So, yeah, I think it's going to happen. And I do think that these are very useful cells, and that it's just incredible the advances that have been made in the biology of repairing spinal cords. It's quite remarkable. You just could not have believed it 10 years ago. And maybe if we get to a point where it's just so obvious it's going to have a really big effect, then the money will come, because somebody makes a really good argument to a Bill Gates or a government. That's what will speed it up.
If I could just add, I think looking at other conditions, that there's several trials into macular degeneration about to start as well. And I think, as Alan said, once we see some success and some safety, then perhaps the other clinical trials will grow in momentum.
Just a quick question. Sorry, what is the P10 that you mentioned?
Now, I'm a pretty poor clinician. I'm even worse researcher. I'll give you what I believe is the Reader's Digest version. I'm sure I'll be corrected. The P10 is a research that's recently come out. I believe the Chinese researcher at Harvard Medical School actually first identified it. P10, I believe, is an enzyme. And they found that by blocking the P10 enzyme, it's allowing axons to regenerate. They've used it on an ocular model, which I believe is somewhat similar in really basic terms to a spinal cord. So they've actually been using it on the ocular system, and axons have been regenerating. And I guess the concept is that by blocking the P10 enzyme, if it's working in the ocular system, at some point in the future, it may be the model might go to the spinal cord. I can be corrected now.
Actually, I blush to say I don't know about that particular research, but that is a model that's used in a lot of different animal studies to see the effects of drugs or whatever on nerve regeneration.
As a person with MS, I'm looking at exchanging bone marrow with a brother or son in an endeavour to seek a cure, and I'm wondering whether the stem cell therapy exchange with bone marrow has some longevity to it. Would the panel like to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean that is being trialled around the world, and as Megan said, somebody's tried it in Canberra. The purpose for that is, as you probably know, but many people don't, is that MS is thought to be a an autoimmune disease. It's where your immune system, your white blood cells, are attacking those same oligodendrocytes that I talked about earlier. And so the concept is that if you have your bone marrow replaced by somebody whose white blood cells are not making the antibodies to attack those cells, that you can treat the disease. So that's the concept, and it is being tried, and there are some formal clinical trials being trialled in that. But as Megan said, it's not without risk. That chemotherapy, it's called ablative chemotherapy. Chemotherapy to wipe out your own white blood cells is a risky business, and it carries certain risks of killing you. Oh yes, and then there's the issue of when bone marrow is put into somebody else, you can have graft versus host disease. So the graft begins to attack the recipient, and that's why you would choose a close relative, because the odds of that occurring are reduced because you're more closely matched immunologically. Yeah.
Being the brother or the son would be the close relative.
Yeah. But your haematologist will be discussing all of those kinds of risks, or you should make sure you talk to them about all of those kinds of risks, because there's still a risk. Your son is not you. Your brother is not you. So it's rare to find an absolute match.
Who would buy hematologist? I would be talking with who?
That's
my neurologist.
Your neurologist, but then if they're going to be doing a bone marrow transplant, it'll be the blood doctor, the haematologist.
It'll be done down in Melbourne, I imagine.
Yeah, but you should be talking to them about the risks, Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know your name, the gentleman on the right.
Bill.
Yep, hey Bill. You said you got your bowel working again. Was that from stem cell?
Yeah, I put that down to that clearly. We weren't even out of Germany before all of a sudden I didn't need to use enemas anymore. To me, that was the whole thrust of going to Germany, was weigh up the risk. That was very important to me. Bowel, bladder, sexual function. That was the whole deal. Because of the physiotherapy I'm going through, and I was in the line to get into the walk-on project before I went away. I wasn't on it when I went, but I was when I came back. I was very confident the walking would happen. You come down to the way I saw it. There was two reputable stem cell operations. The one's in Germany and the one in the States, the Guron Institute. The rest I thought were too high risk for a whole lot of reasons. But Germans are very methodical and very precision-minded, so I thought they would be probably the best choice. Now, interestingly, I spoke to 7 medicos about it. 5 said go, 2 said don't go. But the 2 that said don't go want to talk to me when I came back. So that's an interesting observation in itself.
And did you get your bladder and that as well, or just
bladder's still an issue. I have a unique option of passing about 4 litres overnight, which is a major issue. We've got to come to grips with that yet. Having said that, last Friday things changed in that area, whereas it used to be up to 4 litres overnight, it was 4 litres in the middle of the day. So we're not too sure where that's coming from, but I'll keep you posted on that one. It could be part of the same cycle, given that the institute I went to said it'd be 3 to 6 months before I'd see the results. Last week was 3 months. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen in the next 3 months.
And also, do you think that with further stem cell treatment you can get any better, or? And also with the walk-on program, I just want to know if that works and what's involved with that as well.
Combined with that, I have the walking in the hydro pool every morning. I also have a personal trainer on Tuesdays. I call him the Smiling Assassin. He's also at the at the Sporting Wheelies here in Brisbane. In regard to the extra stem cell, I'm leaning towards going back and getting some more, but unfortunately the clinic I went to was shut down three weeks after I'd had the procedure. They had 4,000 patients to date at that stage, and they'd lost 2. And the 2 that they'd lost was one, an Italian boy with a brain injury, and another person who I can't remember if it was male or female, but was aware of him before I went. And I put that down to 2 out of 4,000's pretty good odds. And I'd hesitate to guess that there'd be 2 people being planted every day out of every hospital in Queensland at the moment. So I thought those odds were reasonable to take on.
So I think it's worth mentioning that the Excel Clinic treated lots of different conditions. And again, it's hard to kind of they talk about how many people they've treated, but not much else. You know, it's frustrating. We don't know enough about what they had been doing. But the children who died, that was for cerebral palsy, or at least one of them was definitely from cerebral palsy. And that was quite an invasive delivery of the cells into the brain. And yes, so I think that was certainly what attracted the attention of the regulators, that it was perhaps, again, when you think about risk and harm, that was probably an intervention too far.
I might add that the doctor who was involved in that was removed from the Excel Centre and also taken off the medical association of Germany. So, but I also, before undertaking this, I went and researched a little bit deeper and actually spoke to clients that had gone through the process. You want to do a lot of research before you go down this path, because there'll be a lot of charlatans out there, I'm sure, who'll take your money. And but again, I came back to two institutions worldwide that I'd take the risk with.
Bill, can I ask, what was the treatment? What did they actually do?
Well, what they, being an adult stem cell facility, they took bone marrow out of my hip, 180 milligrams, and from that they developed 8.5 million stem cells with 100% viability, which means they'll work. They then used mannitol as a brain flush to start, and we put it back through IV. Prior to my going to Germany, that was always done by spinal tap. They stopped doing that and went through the IV, which has got better results apparently.
Yeah. How did you go about making a decision of who to go through? Like you said, there'd be so many people out there that just want to rot you and take your money, and it'd be a massive thing to try and a massive process to try and go through it all and pick.
The ones we looked at were the German operation, the Americans, some in India, China, Mexico, Russia, the Dominican Republic, I think, is another one. I'd question the standards in those countries. I'd also question the web pages that are put up. There's some, like I said before, there's some creative web designers out there. Research, grab their reference patients and actually talk to them. That sort of puts off the web. Internet, yeah, this is a wonderful thing, and all the marketing blurb and take your money. There's other adult stem cell clinics in Germany now. There's one in Leipzig, which is the one I would tend to go and have a look at from here. that's about all I could say on that. I can, if you want, I can give you some email addresses to the people I've spoken to, and you make up your own opinion.
Also, just to help you on that journey, that booklet that we've got on the ACC website, it has a list of questions, and you can ask the clinic those questions, and that might help you get a better handle on what they're offering and how long they've been offering it for and what sort of results they have.
I was going to ask Megan, do you know of anywhere where people can ask questions of people who have undertaken a stem cell treatment? Like, do you know of, like, is there a Facebook
forum?
group or
No.
anything like that? Was there a network of people that...
There's certainly chat rooms, and
Okay.
mainly out of advocacy groups, sort of like what Bill was talking about, where people know people, but isn't a formal one. And what concerns me is, again, by hooking up with people randomly, so there's no kind of putting in context their experience. So by hooking up with people randomly, you kind of go, oh, well, you had stem cells and I had stem cells, so therefore the stem cells worked. Whereas you might be having completely different, you might have had completely different conditions and circumstances and different types of stem cells. So, you know, it's not perhaps as simple as that. So it's an interesting idea, and I think what we were trying to do in our study was at least start to get a handle on that. We actually don't know how many people are even going overseas, and nor are we collecting their information. So I was recently talking to the Cerebral Palsy Association because there is a lot of interest in treating babies, young children, with cerebral palsy with stem cells. And in fact, there's a clinical trial going on in the States that looks very interesting. So on the back of that, a lot of people going, right, I'll go to India now and have it done, or I'll go to China and have it done now. And we were talking about the fact that within their support network, they could even start collecting the opinion experience of people and just documenting it, so that historically, well, at least we'll start to have some history of these experiences. But no, I think certainly with modern technology, we should be able to put up somewhere. I think my concern would be that again, I could see that it could be a promotional, tool in some ways, like a marketing tool. So I'd like to see it somehow monitored and somebody. What do you call it? So moderating the forum.
I guess my experience with people with spinal cord injuries, we're very willing to help each other and share our experiences with each other. And I'm sure that that most people with spinal cord injuries, if there was a place where they could share their experience, and Bill and Alan will probably back us up here, that they'd be glad to join a network and share all that stuff.
Does Wise Young's Care Cure Forum have this kind of discussion happening on it? Do you know the Care Cure?
I don't know.
They do from time to time. They have that sort of interaction for sure.
So Wise Young, if you just Google Care Cure, it's really a moderated chat room, and it's been going for many years, discussing treatments and people's personal experiences. And I haven't looked for a while, but I would imagine that there'd be people there who have gone and had various treatments, and has generated discussion, and then the various clinicians, including Wise, who are moderating it, can add their views.
I mean, the politics behind what they moderate today might have changed, to what they allow and what they delete, what threads are allowed to go through, I don't know. But some of the best things I've learned about living the way I live now, I've learned through other people with spinal cord injuries. So I find that sharing information with other people, it's been fantastic for me. It's given me a learning curve that hasn't been painful on a lot of areas. So yeah, that'd be fantastic. Facebook, Cole, I see you on Facebook. A Facebook group, mate. We should start one.
We have.
I think the other thing is that we've got to capture the people who don't have such a positive experience as well. I think it will almost bias the collection of the information of people who are going to make comments. But I think we should also acknowledge that some people don't have such a great experience when they go away.
I just wanted to ask Bill, how long did you go overseas to Germany for? How long did it last?
Well, originally the whole process was going to take 6 days, of which 2 days were recovery. When we got there, they combined the the bloods and bone marrow extraction the same day. So we were done and dusted in 5 days effectively. But we hung around Germany for 3 weeks just in case something didn't go right, and we didn't want to have the expense of coming all the way back to Australia and then flying back to get it sorted. But that led into some other interesting things like accessibility in Germany. Boy, oh boy, our politicians should go and have a look at some of the stuff that we've got there. It's just absolutely mind-blowing.
Yes, Megan, can I just ask, with your organisation, what percentage of your funding is government? And a second question to that effect, with your, with your colleagues around the world, is the funding increasing much?
So look, it's an excellent point, and so I've worked at 2 organisations. I worked in biotechnology in stem cells, and then I've worked at the Australian Stem Cell Centre, and then I've in my second week at the Stem Cells Australia initiative. Both those 2 initiatives are 100% government funded. The Australian Stem Cell Centre had 100 million over 10 years, effectively 9 years, and that money finished at the end of June. We were spending about 8 million per annum on stem cell research, basic stem cell research principally, not translational work. The new initiative I'm involved in with Stem Cells Australia, our funding is from the ARC, the Australian Research Council. It is solely for research excellence. In fact, my work is paid by the universities. But what I think is interesting is the quantum. So we're going down from 8 to 3. At the same time, NHMRC are slightly increasing some funding for the area, and Alan might like to comment on this as well. And around the world, there is still funding there, but I'm a little concerned that there was a great deal of excitement 10 years ago, and now it's like, well, where's the results? We've given you all this money, and I think it's a longer term prospect. And it's such a shame that we've got a more myopic vision. And I think, unfortunately, in Australia, there was almost a mandate that the funding that the government were investing in this area would see dollar commercial returns. And it may well, but not yet.
Funding, I think that it's all, at the moment in Australia, it's all funded by the governments. And there are cycles. I mean, there was a cycle where they funded special centres like the Australian Stem Cell Centre and our centre, National Centre for Adult Stem Cell Research, and then it's been back to smaller grants, except for the new Stem Cells Australia. So partly that's cyclical, and I think partly it was related to all the discussion about embryonic stem cells and she says I can say hype about embryonic stem cells, and so there was felt there needed to be an initiative to really fund this stuff, and now maybe it's the economic downturn, maybe it's the change of government, but we've kind of gone away from that political will, I suppose.
Back to the point about Geron, I think as soon as we see some success, it'll change. And I before I started working in the stem cell field, I worked in IVF for 15 years. And that area, when I first joined in the 80s, was controversial. There was a lot of discussion about whether it should be public funded. And I think we've seen a huge change in not only social attitudes, but even how it's recognised through Medicare. So again, if there's value seen, money will be found, and if you do the full metrics around quality of life and improvement of health, if it does deliver, then I think it'll be a no-brainer.